Welcome everyone to another episode of Alex Exploring. I am Alex and we are here in Ross County, Ohio today to find all of the Ohio historical markers here in the county. We'll be exploring different towns, including Chillicothe, which was Ohio's first capital. So we'll be adventuring all of that. And then you know, we're just enjoying this beautiful day here, Memorial Day weekend. So let's get started here in Frankfort, Ohio for our first Ohio historical marker. All right, so we are here at the Red Brick Schoolhouse. This is the first historical marker here in Ross County. It's numbered 171, titled the Red Brick Schoolhouse, 1877. Typical of many schoolhouses in the Frankfort area during the 1800s, the school, with its pot-bellied stove and flip-top desks, was part of the public school system of that era. The building and its contents have been restored by the citizens of Frankfort in conjunction with the Bud Company. This was placed here in 1974. So we're gonna let's look into this schoolhouse, see if we can see anything. Some desks there, an old photo, some really old books over here. It's really hard to see. You can see some of the ivy growing into the building here. Birds that have made it its home. You can see the really nice bird's nest right here on the power breaker. But yeah, just a typical brick schoolhouse that was restored here in 1870, or it's built here in 1877 and then restored in the 70s, 1970s. So let's go head on back to the car and make it to our next stop. All right, we are at our second stop here in Ross County. We're here at this church just outside of Frankfort. Do apologize about my sound. I am testing different audio options, so I am using my lapel mic now. We'll continue on with that the rest of the video. But this old church here is where we're going to find our next Ohio historical marker. Here at the Concord Presbyterian Church. This is Ohio historical marker number 1471, placed in 2003, title Concord Presbyterian Church. The Concord Presbyterian Church congregation organized in 1805. The Concord Church was an integral part of the anti-slavery movement and was a station on the Underground Railroad. Reverend James H. Dickey, the congregation's second pastor, was known to be a, quote, an avowed anti-slavery man and an, quote, active Ohio abolitionist. The Anderson and Galbraith families, who were members of the congregation, were Underground Railroad conductors. Fugitives hid in the loft of the church until they could be taken to the next station in either Frankfort or Chillicothe. It's a beautiful church. Very classic architecture here. And there is a large cemetery right next to it. I'm just enjoying the silence far from the highways, so we're just hearing the birds, enjoying this beautiful, almost summer day here in Memorial Day weekend 2023. Let's head on back to our car and get moving to our next stop here in Ross County, Ohio. All right, we are now here in South Salem. We are behind Buckskin Elementary School, where we will find our next Ohio historical marker in front of this building, gazebo, and large cemetery. So let's get going and read that Ohio historical marker. All right, so it's right next to this building here. We're going to so it's adjacent to this uh, building here, and we are going to be, this is number 471 here in Ross County, Ohio, titled Salem Academy. Presbyterian minister Hugh Stewart Fullerton asked his congregation in 1841, "Shall we endeavor to form an academy to provide better educational advantages to the young citizens of this remote community?" Predating the founding of the town of South Salem, the Salem Academy was built and opened in 1842, its stone coming from a quarry south of Greenfield. Its primary purpose was to prepare ministers and teachers for the West. Professor J. A. Lowes served as principal during the golden age of the Academy from 1848 to 1858. The Chillicothe Presbytery controlled the Salem Academy from 1859 to 1907. During this period, it functioned as a junior college, with its students going on to other institutions after a 2-year term. Attendance dropped significantly during the Civil War, while many students served in the Union Army. By the time the academy closed in 1907, more than 1,500 students, including 3 U.S. congressmen and Governor Joseph B. Foraker, had received instruction here. Serving since as a community building, it was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1979. So this here is, you might want to consider it an early junior college and early community college here in Ohio. People came here to learn about religion, about civics, things like that. So, producing congressmen and an Ohio governor, which is pretty remarkable for how remote this community is. It's not far from Chillicothe, but we definitely are out here in very rural areas. The cemetery back here is really large. So let's start headed back to our car, and we're gonna head to Chillicothe to check out the historical markers in town. So let's get going. All right, we have made it to Chillicothe, Ohio University at Chillicothe, for our next Ohio historical marker, number 1771, Joseph Carter Corbin. This was placed in 2016. Joseph Carter Corbin's work in the Reconstruction era, South after the Civil War, created many educational opportunities for African Americans. Corbin, who lived from 1833 to 1911, was a professor, administrator, journalist, linguist, and musician. Born in Chillicothe, Ohio, to free African American parents, he earned his bachelor's degree and two master's degrees from Ohio University in 1853, 1856, and 1889, respectively. In 1872, Corbin and his wife Mary moved to Arkansas, where he served as the state superintendent of public education. In 1875, Corbin was appointed principal of Branch Normal College, which became the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. That is, for those who don't know, that's an historically black college. In 1898, he co-founded and became president of the Arkansas Teachers Association. He was also a leader in the Prince Hall Masons, an African American Masonic order. He served as a secretary and Grand Master of the Lodge's Arkansas chapter. So let's check the back here. Same on both sides, so we'll take a photo, make our way to our next historical marker here in Chillicothe, Ohio, which is the county seat of Ross County. Let's head on over to our next stop. All right, we are here at our next Ohio historical marker here, Dard Hunter. It's at this historical home. This gate around it. Won't be going in, obviously, private property. But we're going to read the Ohio historical marker, which has a very unique font for the title here. So this is number 1371. It was placed in 2003. This classic Gothic revival home, built in the early 1850s, was one of Ohio's early wineries with terraced hillside vineyards overlooking the city of Chillicothe. From 1919 until his death in 1966, it served as the home and working studio of noted American craftsman, artist, and historian Dard Hunter. A major artistic contributor to the arts and crafts movement of the early 20th century, Hunter gained international recognition when in 1916 he became the first individual in the history of printing to produce all aspects of a book by hand. 8 of the 20 books he wrote on the history of paper were printed at this site. Hunter is regarded as the world's leading authority on the history of paper, and his artistic achievements have had an enduring impact on American graphic arts. So that one's really interesting, as I do graphic design as well, but I think really the best part of this historical marker is this view down onto the city of Chillicothe here. Incredible view looking out into the hills and the old city below. And then there's this giant light in the star shape that's probably lit up at night. Oh wow, they have a little trolley car down there. I don't know if you could see that. There was a little old looking trolley car. Yeah, I could stand here and look out into the valley all day long, honestly. It's tucked in up the top of this hill in this little neighborhood at this very old house, 170-year-old house here. Take a quick look at it. They're doing some renovations on it. I love these gates going up into the steps. But absolutely gorgeous home overlooking Chillicothe there. So let's get our historical marker photo and gonna take this all in and move on to our next stop here in Chillicothe. This is Dard Hunter. All right, we are here at our next stop. This is the Lucy Webb Hayes Heritage Center. Includes this blue home, which is the home to our next Ohio historical marker. This one is numbered 671, titled Birthplace of Lucy Ware Webb Hayes. This was placed in 2001. First Lady Lucy Ware Webb Hayes was born in this four-room federal vernacular house in 1831. Took well educated for her time. She attended local schools, took classes in the preparatory department of Ohio Wesleyan University in Delaware, and graduated from Wesleyan Female College in Cincinnati in 1850. She married lawyer and future U.S. President Rutherford B. Hayes in 1852. They raised 5 children to adulthood. As a colonel's wife during the Civil War, Mother Lucy boosted morale for the soldiers of the 23rd Ohio Volunteer Infantry Regiment. In 1870, during Hayes' first term as governor of Ohio, Lucy helped establish the Ohio Soldiers and Sailors Orphans Homes as a state institution. During Rutherford B. Hayes' 1877 to 1881 presidential term, Mrs. Hayes brought temperance to the White House and established lasting traditions, including the Easter egg roll at the White House and the eagle logo on the White House stationery. Politically astute and forthright, Lucy earned widespread admiration and became the first, quote, First Lady, so titled. She died in 1889 and is interred at Spiegel Grove in Fremont in Northwest Ohio. Built circa 1825 and rented in 1826 by Lucy's parents, Dr. James and Maria Cook Webb. The house was moved here from its original East 4th Street location in 1883. The Chillicothe Restoration Foundation saved it from demolition in 1968. It was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1973 as part of the Chillicothe Old Residential District. The Ross County Commissioners completed restoration in 1985. So right here in this little neighborhood, this is where Lucy Hayes was born, the First Lady of the United States, the first titled First Lady of the United States, wife of Rutherford B. Hayes. And you can see on this sign right here, she was born August 28th, 1831. We almost share a birthday. I was born on August 27th. Very cool. Some presidential First Lady history here in Chillicothe. Let's move on to our next stop here in Ross County. All right, we have made it here to the Chillicothe and Ross County Public Library, the main library here in town. Across from these very beautiful homes where we'll find our next historical marker, number 971, placed here in 2002, titled Burton Egbert Stevenson. Born in Chillicothe in 1872, Burton Stevenson's life was devoted to the written word as a prolific author and anthologist and as a librarian, following stints as a journalist while a student at Princeton and at then at newspapers in Chillicothe. Stevenson became the librarian of the city's public library in 1899. He held the post for 58 years. Stevenson helped secure a Carnegie Library for Chillicothe, completed in 1906, and became prominent for his service during World War I. He founded a library at Camp Sherman, an Army training camp north of the city, which became a model for others nationally. Stevenson then went to Paris as the European director of the Library War Service. After the armistice in 1918, he established the American Library in Paris and directed it until 1920, and again from 1925 to 1930. In addition to accomplishments as a librarian, he wrote or compiled more than 50 books, including The Mystery of the Buhl Cabinet, the Home Book of Quotations, and many works for young people. Stevenson died in 1962. Stevenson Center at Ohio University Chillicothe is named for him. So that is Burton Egbert Stevenson, Chillicothe's own. Let's head on to our next stop. All right, we have parked here in Chillicothe, walking to our first stop here in the actual city of Chillicothe. So let's get walking. All right, we are here now at the Chillicothe Gazette building, where we have an Ohio historical marker all about the Chillicothe Gazette, numbered 571, placed here in 2001, titled the Chillicothe Gazette. The oldest commercial enterprise in Ohio, the Chillicothe Gazette began publication on April 25th, 1800, as Freeman's Journal and Chillicothe Advertiser. That October, it became the Scioto Gazette, and Chillicothe has had a Gazette ever since. It is the oldest newspaper in continuous operation west of the Allegheny Mountains, and the second oldest in the United States. Its first publisher and editor, Nathaniel Willis, was a Revolution-era Boston printer who reputedly apprenticed under Benjamin Franklin. Under his leadership, the Gazette became one of the most influential papers in the expanding West. It first reported news transmitted by telegraph in 1847 and began daily publication in 1849. The Gazette moved to this building, a replica of Ohio's first State House, in 1941. So here we got it, the Gazette building. One of multiple Ohio historical markers here in Chillicothe. So We got that one. Let's head on to our next stop. Walk over there and mark this one off our list. Chillicothe Gazette. All right, so we have crossed the street. And we're going to read this Ohio historical marker. This has to be one of the most faded historical markers I've seen here. This is number 271, placed here on August 19th, 1978. The Grand Lodge of Free and Accepted Masons of Ohio. On this site, on January 4th through 7th, 1808, the 6 Masonic lodges then existent in the state met and formed the Grand Lodge of Ohio. General Rufus Putnam of Marietta was elected and the first Grand Master. Because of advanced age and failing health, he declined the honor, and Governor Samuel Huntington was named in his stead. So there's that. It's very faded. But yeah, let's take a quick photo. So the Ohio historical marker is right there. We just saw this beautiful fountain that is built into the ground, not filled. Must be using it for a sprinkler or something. This is the Ross County Archives. What I wanted to show you here is this time capsule that it says county authorities should open in 2048. That is in 25 years. Placed with gratitude to our predecessors and best wishes for the county in a new millennium. So, 2000 they buried, might be 1998 that they buried this time capsule, but in 2048 they're going to open it. So 25 years, if I'm still doing this, we'll come and see that time capsule opening. But let's head to the corner where our next Ohio historical marker is. All right, so here's Ohio historical marker number 371, titled Site of Ohio's First State House. Ross County's first courthouse was Ohio's first state house. The courthouse was erected on the public square in 1801. Thomas Worthington, one of the building's superintendents, laid out the foundation. Chillicothe was the last capital of the Northwest Territory, and the final session of the territorial legislature met in the courthouse in 1801. Ohio's first constitution was written here in 1802. On March 1st, 1803, Ohio's first General Assembly convened in the building, making it the State House. During a time of strained relations between Native Americans and settlers in Ohio, the great Shawnee leader Tecumseh delivered a speech here in 1807 to reassure citizens that the Indians would remain peaceful. The courthouse served as the State House from 1803 to 1810 and from 1812 to 1816. The building was raised in 1852 to make way for the present courthouse. As you can see here, this giant building, absolutely gorgeous. There's a big marker here. This was placed here to commemorate the the United States Daughters of 1812. The state of Ohio was made possible by the Treaty of Paris 1783, which made the Great Lakes the northern boundary of the new United States. In 1787, Congress established the Northwest Territory, dedicated to freedom and public education, with General Arthur St. Clair, its first governor. In 1800, Congress made Chillicothe the seat of government of the Northwest Territory. Here met the territorial legislature in 1800 and 1801. Upon this site was built in 1800. the first state house of Ohio. Here met in November 1802 the convention that framed and adopted the first Constitution of Ohio. Here began the state government of Ohio on March 1st, 1803. Edward Tiffin of Chillicothe was Ohio's first governor. Other governors from Chillicothe were Thomas Worthington, Duncan MacArthur, and William Allen. Chillicothe was platted by Nathaniel Massey in 1796. Presbyterians from Kentucky, with their freed slaves, led by Reverend Robert Finley, were its first settlers. Its first church was organized by them in 1797. The first Ohio Conference of the Methodist Episcopal Church met in Chillicothe in 1812. St. Paul's P.E. Church was dedicated in 1821. An American Methodist Church was established here in 1821, and an African Baptist Church in 1824. The circuit riders traveled here through the wilderness. Chillicothe was the birthplace of Lucy Webb Hayes and of many of Ohio's distinguished sons and daughters. Near Chillicothe are 450 prehistoric sites, relics of the mound builders. To the east rises Mount Logan, inspiration for the state seal of Ohio. Nearby is Camp Bull, a stockade of the War of 1812, a drill ground of the Civil and Spanish-American Wars, and now a part of Camp Sherman. British prisoners were confined here in the War of 1812. So some additional context here. See across the street, we have Ocean City, Maryland, 541 miles. Sacramento, California, 2,532 miles from here. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff here at the Ross County Courthouse. Let's walk on to our next stop here in Chillicothe. So we cross the street, get a better look at the facade of the courthouse. On each end, there's three doors with the title of the office that it's there. So you have the probate, judge, sheriff, clerk, recorder, treasurer, and auditor here. And this is where the first Ohio State House, sat until the 1850s. So really cool building here. Our next historical marker is going to be right down the street at the corner. So we're headed there now. So we're here at right by Hometown Hibachi here, East 2nd Street. We have, there's this street festival going on, but the Ohio historical marker here, 1117, we're going to cover here. It's banking crisis of 1819. This is number 1171, placed here in 2003. To provide direction and stability to the economy, Congress created the nation's largest lending agency in 1816, the second bank of the United States. Branch banks were established around the country, two of them in Ohio, Chillicothe and Cincinnati. The Chillicothe branch was located in a building on this site. The presence of these branches adversely affected the ability of the state chartered and independent banks, which had long printed and lent their own money without the backing of specie. When the Secretary of Treasury forced the state chartered and independent banks to redeem their notes in specie at a time when a sharp recession hit the nation in 1819, a wave of protests arose from those connected with those banks. In February 1819, Ohio's General Assembly levied a tax of $50,000 on each of the two branch banks, and bank officers were given until September 1st to comply with the law. The state's new bank tax was to be collected by State Auditor Ralph Osborne. If payment was refused, Osborne was authorized to search the bank under what has been termed the crowbar law and to seize sufficient money to pay the tax. Osborne hired John Harper to collect the tax in Chillicothe. And on September 17th, 1819, with the help of Chillicothians, Thomas Orr and James McAllister, Harper asked bank officials to comply. When they refused, the three men forced their way into the vault and carried off assets of more than $100,000. Ohio's bank tax, which involved the issue of the state versus federal government rights, was fought over until the Supreme Court, in the case Osborne v. Bank of the United States, decided in favor of the federal government. The 1824 landmark decision, which struck down Ohio's law, was significant as the nation moved further toward recognizing the power of the federal government. All right, so that's the banking crisis historical marker. We're gonna walk through this street fair here to get to our next Ohio historical marker, which is at the end of this street. So let's walk on over, and we'll find that Ohio historical marker. They got fair food here, and oh my god, it smells just so good. Absolutely too good. I'm gonna have to pass up on it, but it is absolutely amazing. Oh look, the history store. Maybe we'll stop in there. So it looks like they have Water Street open for this fair of sorts. Yeah, this whole area is people, and oh look, there's even Schmidt's uh, food truck there. Uh, Great German food. This is the Feast of the Flowering Moon here in Yaktangji Park. We have this statue of the donor, erected in 1917 by Richard Ederlin, to the memory of his comrades who helped to preserve the Union. Ohio historical markers right there. Take a picture of this statue real quick. So here's the front side. The first Northwest Territory Assembly formally met in Cincinnati in September 1799 to initiate self-government. The legislators were deeply divided politically. The Republicans, which were known as Anti-Federalists or Jeffersonians, led by Thomas Worthington and Edward Tiffin of Chillicothe, opposed the appointed government headed by the Federalist governor Arthur St. Clair. They saw it as arbitrary and autocratic and recognized that change could occur only with statehood. To deter the movement, the St. Clair faction in 1801 divided the territory and removed the capital from Chillicothe to Cincinnati. Their actions triggered a violent confrontation led by anti-federalist Michael Baldwin, who incited the local rabble-rousers, known as the Bloodhounds, to riot in the streets of Chillicothe. Both political unrest and advancing settlement accelerated the Chillicothe's faction campaign for statehood. According to the census of 1800, the Northwest Territory had a population of 45,365, far short of the 60,000 required under the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 to form a new state. However, the territory's rapid growth prompted the U.S. House of Representatives to form a committee early in 1802 to report on the prospect of statehood. Following a favorable report, the House passed an enabling bill, which was approved by the Senate and signed as the Enabling Act by President Thomas Jefferson on April 30th, 1802. The following December, Thomas Worthington traveled from Chillicothe to Washington, D.C. to deliver Ohio's Constitution to Congress for ratification. The Constitution upheld the principles of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 and prohibited slavery in Ohio. On March 1st, 1803, Ohio became the 17th state admitted to the Union. All right, there's one more stop here in Chillicothe. So we're going to head on over there and get that last stop before we make our way to a couple other historical markers as well as some Ohio History Connection sites. So let's get going. All right, so walking down here, notice that they have some classic cars out here. Pretty cool. There's some really souped up ones here. Mach 1 Mustang. Got some Crown Vic. Oh, there's a Ferrari of sorts. Hear that motor going. Look at that. Stingray. That guy's got a Boba Fett hat. Oh wow, look at that. Wow, a lot of really cool cars. Look at that. Yeah, this is a blast from the past here. Look at this. This one's 1948 here. Wow. Look at this teal car. Now this one's cool. Some more on this side. Look at these. Look at this truck. A yellow. Oh look, Death Wagon. It's a hearse. I'm gonna let this one pass. Pumped that I stumbled across this street festival. Look at this one. Wow. That is a car I would drive. That looks just like Doc Hudson from Cars. This sign here, Ohio Erie Canal. We know all about the canal. Something smells skunky. So I was just walking down this street to our next historical marker, and you see this really cool Coke advertisement. 5 cents a soda right here on the side of this building. And take a quick picture of that because I love those old advertisements. So cool. All right, we are now on, what was it? North Walnut Street. This is where we're going to find number 1072, Abrams' Big House. This was placed here in 2003. With the Division Act of 1800, the U.S. Congress divided the Northwest Territory at a line essentially the present boundary. Essentially the present boundary of Indiana and Ohio. The Indiana Territory stood west of the line. The name Northwest Territory was retained for the land east of the line, and Chillicothe became its capital. Look at this one. That is a motor. The legislature for the territory convened in Chillicothe in November 1800. Since there were no public buildings in which the legislature could meet, its session was held in a 2-story log house that stood on this site called Abrams' Big House. It was called for its owner, Basil Abrams. During the War of 1812, the building served as the barracks for the 19th U.S. Regiment of Infantry. Thereafter, it was known as the Old Barracks until it was razed circa 1840. So that's our last marker here in town in Chillicothe. So let's take a photo and head back to the car. We'll make it to our next stop. All right, so we are here at our next stop. This is the Story Mound here in Chillicothe, an Adena Mound. It's part of the Ohio History Connection. It's managed by the Adena Mansion and Gardens Society, which is where we're going to be headed next. But, um, this is one of our our places here in our Ohio history uh, uh, passport here. So I'm just going to read what it says here. So the Story Mound is constructed by people of the Adena culture who were here in between 800 BC and 100 AD. In a Chillicothe neighborhood excavated in 1897, this site yielded the first documented example of a circular Adena timber building, common structure of Adena ceremonial and domestic architecture. So, who excavated Story Mound? We'll get our stamp at the Adena Mansion and Gardens, but here's some more information on Story Mound. Story Mound is a typical burial mound of the Adena culture, which lived in southern Ohio and neighboring parts of Kentucky and West Virginia about 800 BCE and 100 CE. The Adena culture was named for the mound excavated on the estate of Thomas Worthington, known as Adena, located a quarter-mile away. Story Mound is about 220 feet high and nearly 100 feet in diameter at the base. The Ohio State Archaeological and Historical Society, now the Ohio History Connection, partially excavated Story Mound in May 1897. At the base of the mound, archaeologists found traces of wooden posts set into a circle about 15 feet in diameter. Along the north wall of this wooden structure, the ancient American Indian builders of the mound had buried a young man. They also placed 3 groups of artifacts, including one set of 6 flint spear points at different places inside the circle. The people of the Adena culture were ancestors of the Hopewell culture, whose earthworks you can see at the Hopewell Culture Natural Historical Park. So there it is. It's one of the first that we'll see today. So let's get a photo and head to the Adena Mansion and Gardens. All right, we are here at the museum. Let's go in and check it out. So we are here at the Adena Mansion and Gardens Museum. We got our stamp for that one, and for Story Mound, which we were just at. So make sure you get your stamps and go through the museum and then explore the grounds. All right, so we have our map here. We were not allowed to do any photography inside the museum, so we're going to walk the grounds here of Thomas Worthington, the Adena Gardens, or Adena Mansion and Gardens. Tours are available, but I am opting just to walk around in the nature and get some good views and pictures. So let's go for a walk. So this mansion is home of Thomas Worthington. He was the governor. He pretty much founded Ohio, and many top people came visited this mansion, Thomas Worthington, at his home, including Presidents James Monroe and William Henry Harrison. you know, beautiful, just a lot of room here. Take it all in. I mean, this is an absolutely gorgeous day to come out and explore some history. Let's look at this, the Hilltop Farm. The area north of the mansion, including several buildings, 3 of which have been reconstructed. Many other structures stood on top of the Adena hilltop, such as the corn crib, a stable, a sheep house, and at least one cabin for a shepherd, as well as other outbuildings associated with the residences. So the farm buildings are just straight ahead of us here. And the house is right over here. My big thing here, I want to see the house. I'm not going to go inside of it, as of now. I want to see the Great Seal overlook. Should give us a really nice view of Chillicothe. Another great view. So you can see down here, there's 2 more structures. Those are going to be the other barn buildings. But I imagine for the age of internet and screens and all of that, there are a lot more people hanging out, visiting these grounds. You can see we're walking in up on the grounds. Really, really old building here, over 200 years old. So you can see a lot of the original bricks, chimneys, shingles. Now, I'm sure those have been replaced here and there, but here's an entrance to a cellar. This is the wash house. Servants did the Worthington laundry in this building, as well as soap and candle making. Workers kept the wood dry in the room behind the fireplace, and a well on the edge of the porch was a convenient source of water. So you can see in here what it may have looked like, or what it may have been set up like, but structures all original. You can see the wood was placed in here like that. No nails or bolts to do that with, but here is the smokehouse. During the winter, hams and bacon were preserved in the smokehouse for use throughout the year. The meat was treated with a sugar salt cure in the large trough at the back of the room for about 6 weeks. The ham and bacon were then hung from the ceiling joist and smoked with a smoldering hardwood or corncob fire until glaze formed on the meat that repelled insects and retarded spoilage. Small windows allowed the smoke to slowly escape and prevented animals from entering. The cured and smoked meat remained in the smokehouse until used. Today, a Smithfield ham is probably the closest commercial product available. As you can see here, these tables look pretty of period. You can see some, just when, that trough is where it would sit. It would all sit. Here's another information board. The work yard. This is absolutely covered in pollen. The west side of the house was for the servants. The service outbuildings opened on to the work yard. Washing and soap making probably went on here. Some workers prepared food in the area. Archaeologists found cow and pig bones here, and even a few mollusk shells, probably freshwater clams. So yeah, people would be here working. And he lived here too. Here's the servants' hall. North end of each wing functioned as servants' quarters. This room served as the servants' hall. The central table served as a workspace for polishing silver, repairing things, and sewing. Here, the household staff took their meals or sat around talking during their limited time off. A stairway in the alcove at the rear led upstairs. Now one large room, the second floor may have been divided into 2 or more bedrooms in the past. The household staff lived in the mansion so they could be on call at all times. So, pretty standard, if you might say so myself, but nonetheless, history. So here's the front tour going on. So if you want to take a tour, you are more than welcome to. I'm not here to tour, I'm here to explore. So this is the front of the mansion. I'm going to get a better view, but I'm going to take a look at the gardens first. The Adena Gardens. In 1815, Worthington hired indentured servants to create the 3 terraces that define the Adena Gardens. Each terrace measuring about 100 by 200 feet. Terracing was a common feature of Virginia plantation gardens in the 1700s, while Virginia terraces were covered typically by lawn. Worthington laid out terraces at Adena as flower garden, a kitchen garden, and a vineyard with fruit vines and shrubs. For entering the flower garden, I would love to see that kitchen garden, see some fresh vegetables, see where their plants are at compared to my garden, which I haven't even planted yet. So that's probably what I'll be doing later on today. But it smells amazing here. Flowers are extremely fresh. It's spring, so perfect time to come and take in all the smells and whatnot. The flower garden was a place for entertaining. It could be thought of as an extension of the drawing room. The quiet path served also as a place of relaxation. When the Worthington daughters left home, they took plants, seeds, and cuttings with them to continue the Adena tradition in their own homes. Very interesting. That's kind of the side / back side of the the second tier is where the kitchen garden would be. Doesn't look like anything is growing. On this terrace, Eleanor Worthington supervised the servants who grew the fresh vegetables and fruits needed for the Adena dining room. To teach the children the skills they needed to run their own homes, she gave them their own garden plots to tend to. It's a decent sized garden, I gotta say so myself. Looks like there are some stakes here that labels what's here. Garlic chives. Some more, looks like more garlic, things like that. So I stand mistaken, there is some things planted here, but That looks like it could be like a tomato potentially. Oh, these are some vines here. Something good. Got some lettuce and cabbage. There's beets growing here. Peas. Those are peas. Carrots are growing here. Yeah, you can see the carrots right there. And which one's this? It's got to be some kind of tomato. It looks like tomatoes to me. Then on this side, you can see that's where the vineyard would have been. We'll walk over here. These trees are awesome. Let's see what this sign says. On this terrace, Thomas Worthington grew grapes and other small fruits. With these, Eleanor Worthington and servants made wine and preserves. At least once, he also grew potatoes here. You see some vines, fresh vines, but nothing too crazy. All right, we're gonna go where that car is to look at the overlook. All right, this is the Grove. The Grove is an ornamental wood, several acres in size. The Grove is an expansion of the garden ideals from the 1700s. It marked a transition space between the woods through which you pass on the way to Adena and the formally landscaped garden terraces. While appearing to be natural, the Grove included trees, shrubs planted in geometric shapes. Now it's just a nice little shaded area here in the gardens. Let's head on over to the overlook. All right, so here's the crossing to the Great Seal Overlook walkway. Head right over here to that gap. So let's scurry on over there. All right, so this is the Overlook Terrace. We have a sign from the Ohio Historical Society here from 1967 that is this overlook. It's definitely a little overgrown compared to what it used to be. The view of Mount Logan is said to have inspired the design of the coat of arms of the state of Ohio. Tradition relates that Thomas Worthington, one of Ohio's first two U.S. senators, Edward Tiffin, first governor, and William Creighton, first Ohio Secretary of State, after an all-night party at Worthington's home, watched the sun rise over Mount Logan from near this spot. The sight impressed the leaders of the new state so profoundly that in 1803 a coat of arms was provided by law incorporating a basic motif of a demi-sun in splendor rising above a mountain. The sun represents the new state, the sheaf of wheat signifies agriculture, and the bundle of 17 arrows denotes the fact that Ohio was the 17th state admitted to the Union. The Great Seal is composed of the coat of arms with the encircling inscription, the Great Seal of the State of Ohio, and is reserved for official use by the governor. It's 1967. So there's the overlook. Zoom in there. Let's take a photo for prosperity, and then we will head back, get a photo of the mansion, and then we'll be headed to our next Ohio historical marker. All right, so here's the front of the Adena Mansion. Main building straight ahead. Little part on the right, servants' quarters. Part on the left, servants' quarters. So a lot of people working here, whether indentured or not. This place took a lot in the early 1800s to take care of a home like this. I mean, you needed money, you needed the privilege, so you know, definitely show that privilege. But let's take a photo, head back to the car. We'll come and explore more of the mansion, take a tour. Um, Another time, I'd love to take my wife here. I think she would really enjoy it. But to get that photo, head back to the car. I think we have two historical markers left here in Ross County that we will travel and visit um, by the end of the video. So let's get going. So on my way out, I grabbed one of these Chillicothe visitors guide so I can figure out some other things to do here in Ross County, Chillicothe in general, because it's absolutely gorgeous out here with all the hills and all the forests and things like that. So make sure you come check this out. I got in for free because I am a Ohio Historical Connection member, but I think it's $12 for adults if you decide to come in. So with that being said, let's head off to our final two historical markers. All right, we're at our next Ohio historical marker. We're at kind of the corner of crossroads of State Route 35, and then or no, that's not State Route. That's US 35 and State Route 104, which 104 is was put on the trail that went alongside the Ohio Erie Canal. So give you some context for our next marker. So here it was built on the Ohio Erie Canal, Camp Sherman. This is this is Ohio historical marker 771, put here in 2001. The United States declared war on Germany in April 1917, largely through the efforts of Chillicothe attorney John Poland. The War Department selected Chillicothe as the site of an Army training camp for inductees from Ohio, West Virginia, and Western Pennsylvania. Construction began at Camp Sherman, named for Civil War General William Tecumseh Sherman, in June 1917. We remember William Tecumseh Sherman from our Fairfield County video. He's from Lancaster. When the first recruits arrived in September, more than 14,000 workers had erected 2,000 buildings on the 1,700-acre site. The rapid influx of soldiers increased Chillicothe's population from 16,000 to 60,000. So imagine 34,000 or 44,000 people just coming into town at the cusp of World War One. It's pretty amazing to think about. Aha! Here's something that's kind of it's interesting. Granted, the time after the COVID-19 pandemic, the worldwide Spanish influenza epidemic arrived at Camp Sherman in September 1918. Of the 8,000 people infected, 1,100 died within 2 months. 200 German prisoners were interned here from July 1918 to September 1919. 4 divisions, 123,581 men trained at Camp Sherman. The 83rd and 84th Divisions went overseas, but the 95th and 96th did not complete training before November 18 armistice. Discharges began within days and were completed by July 1920. The government sold the buildings but retained the land, now the site of 2 correctional facilities and the veteran Administration Hospital. So right down the road where those water towers are is where the correctional facilities are for Ross County, which, I mean, this whole area encompassed from this area all the way to those towers. So 1,700 acres, a lot of land. It's now this little park. Not too much going on here, but this is where Camp Sherman used to be. Big place for World War I Army training, as well as some pandemic history here in America. So one more left. Let's hit that up and wrap this adventure off. So they have here at the Great Seal State Park, they have a COVID-19 pandemic memorial grove. Obviously, this video is going to be coming out in 2023, so it's been almost 3 years since lockdown, and there's a memorial here for COVID-19 pandemic. We'll take a glimpse at that after we take a look at this, because it's only been 3 years since lockdown, since it started. So many people died, and they have built this little grove here with this statue of birds, and how fitting. There's a bird sitting right on top of the metal birds. This is to memorialize COVID-19 and its effect on our world. It's a beautiful art piece there. Obviously had to be recently done, but a nice little walkway area with oak trees planted around it. But this is something I've never seen before. The government officially ended the health emergency this year, earlier this year. So I find it remarkable that they have brought it to light already. You can see a beautiful look out into the landscape. See some towers and whatnot, some cell phone towers in the distance. Yeah, really interesting. Really interesting. It's right here at this camping area, so you see people camping out and whatnot. Let's read a little bit about it here. The COVID-19 Pandemic Memorial Grove, dedicated by Governor Mike DeWine, April 30th, 2021. On April 30th, 2021, Governor Mike DeWine dedicated this site to honor the lives that were lost, the sacrifices, and the bravery of so many Ohioans to care for others during the COVID-19 pandemic. May this memorial grove be a place of peace, solace, and remembrance for Ohioans of this time in our collective history. Sculptures titled After the Storm by Kevin Lyles of Gallipolis, Ohio. So that will give you some insight on that sculpture. Let's read that last, this marker that we passed already, and then we'll outro it out. Great Seal State Park history. The hills where you stand were inspiration for the design of the Great Seal of the state of Ohio. The seal, first depicted in 1803, was often reconfigured until the present image was sanctioned by the Ohio General Assembly in 1967 and modified in 1996. In 1803, the law prescribed the sheaf of wheat to represent Ohio's agricultural roots and the bundle of 17 arrows to symbolize Ohio's place as the 17th state in the Union. In the background is a range of hills, including Mount Logan, as viewed from Thomas Worthington's estate, Adena, now a state memorial. The sun's 13 rays represent the 13 original colonies. The Scioto River flows between the hills and the cultivated fields in the foreground. Tradition attributes the design to the cooperative vision of Thomas Worthington, the first U.S. Senator and the, quote, father of Ohio's statehood, Edward Tiffin, Ohio's first governor, and William Creighton, Ohio's first Secretary of State. After an all-night meeting at Adena, they viewed the sun rising over Mount Logan and chose the scene for the state seal. Much of the land illustrated in the Great Seal State now comprises Great Seal State Park. So there we are. All right, with that being said, we are off this episode of Alex Exploring. Make sure to like, subscribe, favorite, click that notification bell to make sure that you get updates on my next adventure here in Ohio. So with that being said, Alex Exploring out. See you on my next adventure.